the last time that you've read a book for pleasure? That you got a book either from the bookstore, the library, or maybe there's a book that you listen to on audio, or maybe you are reading on your tablet and you are just getting in what they call the reading zone. You are just engaging in that book. Well, according to a study that was done, the reading for pleasure has declined for Americans because they studied Americans only. It was 236,000 from 2003 to 2023. They said the reading for pleasure had gone down significantly, meaning 40%. So it went from like 28% of folks in 2003, 2004, reading for pleasure daily to just a couple of years ago, 16% of folks. And again, these are Americans, okay? But guess what? For those of us who are in the Black community, we are used to hearing this particular saying, right? Which is when white folks, when they get a cold, we get the bubonic plague, all right? So it has gone down even significantly for Black people. Like the dip went down way, way down, okay, for Black folks and those who are actually from low income communities as well. And it also said rural communities as well. And when I read that, and I have to shout out Dr. Artika Tyner. She is a lawyer and author. And I actually had a conversation with her on Real Reading Talk, which I will make sure that I post that link so you guys can look at that interview, that conversation that we had. It was either earlier this year or last year. But she was one of the people who was talked to when this article was written, and basically just talking about how in the Black community, in particular, how we really have to make sure that we are incorporating reading in our daily routine and not just reading something just so that we have to take a test or reading so that, we're just like having to research something. Like literally, this article focused on reading for pleasure, reading simply because you want to read something. So whatever that is, if it's some comic books, if it is a romance novels, if it's mystery, science fiction, or maybe you're a nonfiction person, you're a history buff, you love learning about Black history, whatever it is that you're into, you should be able to engage in that book and want to be able to read for pleasure. Now, of course, those of you who are avid readers, you already know. I'm speaking to the choir, right? I'm preaching to the choir with this one, because of course, in talking about the issue, we got to talk about what are the problems? Where did that come from? Well, quite obviously, one of the issues is digital media. They mentioned in the article, social media, TikTok, Instagram, that instant gratification, that not wanting to have something where you actually have to do a sustained activity for a considerable amount of time, where it requires you to be focused, where it requires your concentration, it requires you to have deep thought. This is what reading for pleasure does. And when we have a society, a culture that is centered on just bam, bam, everything, information coming at you. I mean, just all the time, all the time. And then entertainment at your fingertips. If you don't want to look at anything that's healthy, if you do not want to see anything that's going to be beneficial, all you got to do is just go to the particular sites, or if you're on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is that you are, pages that you're going to that just piques your interest, and it has nothing to do with anything that's healthy or beneficial, you can actually curate your page and all the information that you get to see only those particular things. So we're competing against folks who created, who had that mindset of, yeah, I want to capture the minds of the people and I just want to have them just locked into what I put in their face. That is just, to me, one of the most devilish things. But as we know, we have the tools, we have the ways in which we can combat that. That is why, again, that I'm always reiterating why I created Real Reading Talk. Not just to talk about these issues, but to give the solutions, to give us viable options so that we can get back into doing activities that's going to actually help us develop those critical thinking skills, help us to become more creative, help us to be problem solvers. For my entrepreneurs out there, we know that that's what entrepreneurship is. That's what those who create businesses, we solve problems. We don't just focus on the problems, we identify the problems, and then we work towards the solution of those problems. So I wanted to draw your attention to to the other component that they talked about in terms of how we can flip this around. And when I tell y'all, when I started seeing the different ways in which they said you can rekindle this pleasure reading, if you will, I was just smiling to myself, y'all, because guess what? Our organization, ABC Read, this is what we have been promoting for over 10 years. One of the things that they talked about is having activities that are literacy centered, that are in the community, that we can actually be a part of. These are things and ways in which we can help get that pleasure reading, get that love for reading back into our communities. And this is the one of the foundational principles of ABC Read, which is creating what we like to call reading experiences, where we have a lot of engaging activities, where we have games, project-based learning, where our kids and adults, by the way, it's intergenerational, where they've done things like made dioramas. We've also did collages where the collages focused on Black authors and architects and artists. We also have, we're known for having our, what is called our ABC Read Jeopardy game. So again, this is another way to make literacy fun, to learn about different things, but you're doing it in a way where it doesn't come off like you're just like you're in a classroom and you're sitting there and you have to just, be rigid. No, you're interacting. All right. You're having conversations with other people. It's very community centered. And so when I read that in the article, I was like, come on, let's do this. Okay. Another thing that they talked about, reading with your children. Because I mean, it's the studies had already been shown with that. The National Reading Panel, they studied that. They talked about that in the 80s, where basically reading aloud, reading to children, that is one of the ways in which we can create a strong foundation for our children in reading. So when you are engaging in those read alouds, it doesn't just have to be the bedtime stories. It could be a breakfast time story, like my dear sister Sharia Schultz, who, by the way, was a guest on Real Reading Talk, and she talked about that, how the bedtime stories wasn't hidden. So she did breakfast time. That was the time that she was able to get that reading in with her children before they were off to school and she was off to work. So again, once again, having these engaging ways, having these fun ways that we can actually incorporate a culture of literacy in our communities. And then it also talking about supporting local libraries. I mean, this right here is just, it's a no-brainer, but I'm gonna tell you, I will say, when I go into these libraries, because a lot of times when I'm in the libraries, I'm either tutoring in the libraries a lot, or we also are having our different reading experiences, our reading camps inside of these libraries, especially on the weekends, it's extremely hard to get our youth. And when I say our youth, I am referring a lot to our Black children, right? And children who come from our low income communities. It's hard to get them into those libraries. And then when they do come into the libraries, when I do see our babies in the libraries, what are they doing? They're either on the computer, or if they're older, they using the library as to just kind of kick it. They walking through the library, being loud, talking all loud, and playing around and all that type of stuff. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, man. So it's like the social club. I have no problem with them coming to the library to socialize. However, if our children are not taught off the rip to have that certain level of respect for the libraries, and the library should not be treated as this loud hangout where you just go there and you just like just being just off the chain and off the hook. And this is what I've seen in libraries. I'm talking about with our Black youth, Black young teenagers. We have to model for them and let them know that when we're going to the library, first of all, you have a certain level of respect. You definitely should use your inside voice. And and also what can be incorporated is that as the adults, don't just send your kids into the library and just say, go. You go in there with them and you guide them into choosing a book. Let them know, say, hey, you know what? I want you to pick out a book that you're interested in. And you probably gonna get some pushback because guess what? My kids is still it literally because of what we're dealing with this social media age and with this age of them being on their phones, and they feel like they don't have to what they got to read for. They can get information or whatever when they want to off of their phones or off of their tablets or whatever the case may be. So we have to really get back into it's almost like we got to hold their hand and say, hey, look, this is what I want you to do. I need you to pick out one or two, three or four books that you're interested in. You have an incentive. Say, hey, you read this book, you finish this book in 2 weeks, depending on the length of the book, and then I'll treat you to lunch, and we can discuss what the book was about. Okay. So these are things in which, by the way, I did that with my daughter. We had a conversation. We have recorded it again. That's on my podcast as well, where we were discussing a particular book that we had read over lunch. So, but again, these types of statistics, we cannot have this. All right. We have to make sure that we are creating in the minds of our babies that reading is not something that's just equated to taking a test. Because real talk, that's how they view reading. They view reading as, okay, I have to read this passage, or maybe I got to read this couple of chapters of this book because I have a test at the end of the week. Or we got to prepare for the iReady tests. You know how they now it's all these different tests. They went from NWEA to this to that. Now it's iReady. So now the kids, they're preparing for that, and that's what's on their minds. That's why it's hard for them to even focus on reading for pleasure. So just think about it. If somebody is just trying to tell you that, okay, you do this particular task or this activity, and it's just you only worry about it or think about it when it's related to you having to take a test or something of that nature, then that's all they're going to associate it with. If they are not associating reading with them being able to relax, being able to actually get a book and just chill without somebody, and that's another thing too, without somebody having to always question them about what it was about. Sometimes what we got to do, and I'm speaking to myself with this first. Sometimes what we got to do too is when we want to create pleasure in something, don't try to turn it into like a little miniature like test. still at the end after they've enjoyed the reading. So tell me, what was the, so what were the characters doing? And, can you talk about the foreshadowing in the book? And, what was the problem they were solving? Or, what was the set, all of it's like that could turn them off from reading too. If we just simply allow them to have the space to read, relax, and chill, let them get into the reading zone without the questions, without the pop quiz afterwards, to really make sure, was you really reading? We just allow them to just be with that book. I know we will see some turnarounds. We will get some gains. I truly believe that. We used to have back in the day, for my folks in my age group, we remember SSR, right? The sustained silent reading. And then we had, I know in the schools, they had the dear reading, drop everything and read. Not for sure if they're doing that anymore. I don't really hear about that a lot. Now they may, again, you have schools, you have some schools, they still focus on certain things. But majority of the schools that I see, when I'm going into the schools, because I'm a substitute teacher as well, I don't usually see that. I don't usually hear about teachers giving the kids that opportunity to read books. Now, what I will see, I'll see in classrooms, it'll be teachers, they'll have shelves with books in the back, but it's almost like it's for decoration. And I'm not saying, of course, this is for all teachers. For any of my teachers who listen to the podcast, you know what I'm saying? Those of you who know, right? I ain't talking to y'all. I'm talking about those, again, who they literally just seem like they have those books on the shelves for show. Because what I do, I'll go in the back and I'm like picking up books. I'm like, Dad, this book seems like it's never been cracked open. Like, are these, are the kids reading? And then it's times where I'll ask the kids, I'm like, so are you guys, reading certain things? Or, what books have y'all read? Oh, no, we haven't read a book. But it'll be passages, though. It'll be passages left for them to do. But in terms of like being able to actually get into a book, you're not seeing that still. And just like I said, with this particular study, I mean, again, when listen, as they say, the data don't lie, right? and you can see with your own eyes. You do not see people who are into reading like they used to be. And that's just a fact. Reading for pleasure, that's like, okay. And if you do not have time to pick up a physical copy of a book, I'm always suggesting that you listen to a book on audio. That is like to me, one of the most relaxing things that you can do. And it's a way for you, again, to be able to get that reading in. You talk about the vocabulary acquisition that occurs. Again, the focus, your imagination, fostering the creativity, all of these things that are needed in order for you to not just to be a thorough reader, but actually it goes into all aspects of your life. When we have that foundation of reading, when we're able to focus on something and be able to have that concentration on something, now when it comes to you being able to complete a task on a job, or if there's a project that you maybe you're doing some DIY projects in your house, whatever it is that you're trying to do, trust and believe that reading, you having that habit and develop that habit of reading for pleasure, reading for a considerable amount of time, you're going to see that skill show up in other things that you are doing and you're taking care of in your life. So I hope that this information was, on point. I hope this will actually spark and ignite in you to not only just share this particular episode, but to also say, let me start incorporating more of that pleasure reading into my activities, especially for my adults out there. We have to remember We can't go and just tell our kids, okay, I need you to read. You need to put that device down. Why are you on that phone? They need to see you reading. Just like I talked about in my other episode, the young lady who said that her parents were adamant about her reading, but they were not doing it themselves because they were so busy working. They were trying to take care of the home and everything like that. And she looked up and she like, dang, man, I'm the only one reading in this house. My siblings, for whatever reason, because we didn't get into a deep as to why her siblings weren't told to read like that. But she was the one, and they put her in reading programs and all that type of stuff. But again, the parents, they were not modeling that for her. And that's why eventually she wound up saying, you know what, man, forget this reading stuff. I ain't about to be reading. So we have to make sure as parents and caregivers, when we are around our children, we have to be reading as well. And remember, let's put the joy back into reading, y'all. Make reading fun. Make it pleasurable. Make it be enjoyable. All right. So I thank you all again for listening to another episode of Real Reading Talk. I am your most gracious host, Miss Sasha. And remember to please keep reading for at least 30 minutes a day. Reading is freedom. Peace. All right, everybody. So I hope you all enjoyed that episode of Real Reading Talk. And remember, get your reading on, y'all, okay? Every single day. Do a couple of housekeeping. So I am a reading tutor, pre-K through fourth grade. I'm also an Orton Gillingham certified dyslexia tutor. So if your child has been diagnosed with dyslexia, or if your child just has any type of reading struggles, please reach out to me by going to my website, abclearntutoring.com. Click on the free reading assessment today. And I'm also the founder and executive director of ABC Read. ABC Read is a nonprofit organization that I started over 10 years ago. And our mission is to develop and nurture a culture of literacy in Black and underserved communities. We've given out over 8,000 books, have reading experiences, literacy workshops, and a dope reading club that we had. And we're also going to be starting one for our youth, 3rd through 5th grade. That information is forthcoming really soon. All right. So go to abcread.org to check us out. And if you would be so kind and gracious to give us a donation, that would be truly appreciated. And also, if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel where this podcast will be, which is Reading is Freedom. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit the notification bell. And also, y'all, grab your merch, all right? Where's my mug? There it is. Bam. Oh, I got to get off the shelf. That's a little more better. All right. Reading is Freedom. All right. So I have a website, readingisfreedomshop.com, where you can grab your mug like this, especially we're getting into our cozy up and read time of year, right? That fall. Okay. So you cozy up with that book, your favorite drink. All right. Or you can grab your hoodie. We have bags. Just check out the website. All right. And your girl is an author, y'all. That's right. Healed, Empowered, Resilient. Her. This is an anthology, which is a compilation of different stories in here. Each of us have our own chapters. Me and 9 other amazing women talking about the different things, the adversities, the trials, the tribulations that we had to overcome in our lives and how we were able to do that. And this is how we were able, again, to tap into being healed, empowered, and resilient. So make sure that you grab your copy on Amazon as well. So, and I want to end with this. The book that I've been reading is I've actually been listening to this memoir called Brown Boy by Omar Aziz. Omar Aziz. All right. Excellent book so far. Oh my goodness. I'm just really loving it. I've been, like I said, listening to it. And he's reading it and he's doing an excellent job. I love memoirs. I noticed that. I'm like, that's one of my go-to types of books as well. So I hope that you all are getting your reading on, again, reading for pleasure. And I would love to leave you all with this quote by Malcolm X, which he said, "Reading has forever changed the course of my life." So again, my name is Miss Seisha, and this has been another episode of Real Reading Talk. And remember to please keep reading for at least 30 minutes a day. Reading is freedom. Peace.